Hello, my name is Gemma and welcome back to February's episode of Hot or Not, a series of videos where I review brand new releases so that you can get a better idea of whether it's worth your time and money. So, the pick for February was Witchcraft for Weyward Girls by Grady Hendrix, which is very popular. Just so you're all aware, I do put a poll up on my community tab every time there is a hot or not video for you to pick the book for next month. So when this video goes live, there will be a poll for the March hot or not pick. So please go ahead and vote for what you would like to see reviewed. But the winner for this month was Witchcraft for Weyward Girls. So Grady Hendrix is a big name in the horror genre. I read a book by him for the first time last year. I read Horror and I very much enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. Is there much literary prowess? Debatable. We will talk about whether I thought there was or not in this book shortly. But this book in particular follows a young girl, Neva, or Fern, as she will be known for the majority of the book. She is 14, 15 and pregnant, and the book opens with her father driving her to Weyward House, a sort of home for wayward girls, girls who have got themselves pregnant out of wedlock. So this is set in the 60s, where that was very, very much frowned upon. And we meet a cast of characters who are all teenage, pregnant girls, and we sort of get to understand a bit more about each of their circumstances. So when Neva arrives at the home, she's given a new name, Fern, and she is known as that for the rest of the book. There will be no spoilers in this review, FYI. I'm just setting the book up, giving you a brief synopsis. And so she is then known as Fern, and she meets some of the other girls that are there. Miss Weyward is unpleasant, shall we say. She is the matron of the home, and she is caring for these girls. She's obviously paid quite a lot of money by their parents for these girls to stay there for sort of the second half of their pregnancies through to birth, and then for about 2 weeks afterwards. And so Fern is thrown into this situation, and she doesn't want to be there, and she is reflecting on some of the mistakes that she's made, and we are understanding how some of the other girls here came to be there. And she makes close friends with 3 other girls in particular. And when those 4 girls come across a book of magic that allows them to perform witchcraft, at first they think not a lot of it, and then they start to understand that actually they can do magic, and that maybe they are capable of some dark acts. So there was a lot to be enjoyed in this book. I'm going to talk about the things I liked. So, as with the previous Grady Hendrix I've read, it's quite action-packed. There is a lot going on. You kind of want to get to the root of the story, and it propulses you through the narrative. It's very easy reading. You're just absorbing it, and it is a fun ride. I also really like the idea of sort of women who are being oppressed, sort of finding their inner power and trying to use that to create some autonomy for themselves. I liked that as a theme going through the book, and the way that these girls sort of banded together and the female friendship element was fantastic. One of the main things that I noticed in comparison to Horror that I read before is that Grady Hendrix really has developed in his ability to build character. We definitely saw more of the motivations and the driving forces behind some of these characters. They were better fleshed out, not just the main character, but the supporting characters as well. So he's definitely progressed in that perspective between Horror and this one. So that was good to see, because that's one of my main critiques of Horror. I also really enjoyed sort of the house as a character almost. This sort of, you can imagine this like sort of large house down a long drive. It's set in Florida. very hot, very arid in places, but there's this big forest at the back, and just this ability to create this scene and to have it a focal point of the book was really, really fantastic, and I love that. I love that in a lot of books, and I think Grady Hendrix did a great job of that in this. Obviously, the subject of teenage pregnancy is actually quite topical at the moment with what's happening in the US around abortion rights. Back in the 60s, this was pre-Wade versus Roe, and so these girls did not have a choice. They had to give birth, and they were then forced to give those children up for adoption. So I think the exploration of that, particularly in the current political climate, was interesting and timely. So I think well positioned by Hendrix. And at the end of the book, it did bring a little tear to my eye. It was quite moving, quite sad in places, and what the girls had to go through, sort of when you looked back at it from the end of the book, I felt it did create quite an emotional reaction. So I really, really enjoyed all of those things. That said, is this a perfect book? And the answer is no. But I also don't feel like you pick up Grady Hendrix looking for a perfect book. You're picking up Grady Hendrix looking for a rip-roaring time, and he definitely delivered that for me. But there were some things that I just didn't think were very believable. In this, really, all of the adults are arseholes. And I just find it very difficult to believe that none of them had a shred of sort of sympathy or empathy or emotion or a kind word to say to any of these girls. Yes, I know that was sort of the time and things were different, but like none of the adults, none of the medical professionals had anything positive to say. I found that really, really unlikely, and it was just a little bit lazy, I felt, on Hendrix's part, because he wanted to play this narrative of the woe is me, I'm a poor pregnant teenage girl and nobody understands me. But I feel like some people would have understood. You could argue that Hagar, who's the cook, did have some sympathy for them, and I would agree, but I just feel like it wouldn't have been so black and white, and that irked me a little bit. I just felt like that was a little bit lazy storytelling, that he couldn't be asked to put a bit of nuance in there. Sort of along the same lines, there were a few plot conveniences along the way. I saw this in Horror Store as well. I think if you really wanted to, you could absolutely rip holes in this plot. I am not inclined to do that because I was just reading for enjoyment. I don't read books in order to annihilate them. But there were definitely plot holes. There were things where it's like, not really sure it would have happened like that, or not really sure why that character made that decision, because it's not, you wouldn't make that decision. So yes, there were plot holes for sure. And overall, I felt like the book gave off quite a lot of YA vibes. I'm not a massive fan of YA, so it was a little bit on the cusp for me. Overall, I really enjoyed it, but I would have liked it to be a bit more elevated, a bit more critical, a little bit more complex than it was. I felt like a lot of the subjects were dulled down a bit. One of the subjects that wasn't super dulled down was childbirth. So childbirth obviously plays a role in this book about a house of pregnant girls. Not sure I'm a massive fan of men writing about women's experiences, like specific women's experiences like childbirth. Not sure he did a great job. It was quite graphic. I felt like it was overdone in places, and I listened to this on audiobook, and the audiobook narrator, I didn't have a problem with her narration until the childbirth scenes, when she was trying to recreate a woman moaning in labour, and there was like, and I was like, I don't really think that's how people sound. Certainly I did not make those weird, like, ghosty noises when I was giving birth. It was very bizarre and very off-putting, and it very took me out of the scene listening to the audiobook. So just a note there. But in general, men writing about women's issues, yes, of course they can, doesn't mean I have to like it. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but certainly I didn't think the childbirth sections were super accurate or realistic for me. Also, the witchcraft in this book, though it is present, I felt like it was actually quite low key. We didn't see a lot of massive witchcrafty things really until towards the end of the book, and they were sort of quite sparse. So I would have liked to see a lot more magic, a lot more witchcraft, and we didn't really get that. I felt like Grady Hendrix did take quite a long run up that possibly wasn't needed. Maybe that was in his attempt to create the characters. So, you know, on one hand I'm saying, yeah, he did a great job doing the characters, but maybe it was too long because he took too long to do that. I don't know, it's a little bit difficult. Or maybe he should have had more action whilst building the characters, I'm not sure. But overall, I did feel like it was probably about 50-ish pages too long, and lacking a little bit of magic for me. It's definitely less scary than Horrorstall was. I obviously can't compare to his other works, but I wasn't at any point in this book scared. And there is a lot of body horror, I would say, so if that's not your jam, then possibly steer clear. But overall, though I do have a lot of notes of criticisms and things that weren't great with the book that people may well find completely turn them off, I found that I was able to put all of that to one side because I was just enjoying the story. It was just fun, and I was reading it at a time when I just wanted a book that wasn't going to tax my brain too much, and I could just listen to and enjoy and just be there for the ride. And so I gave it a 4-star overall, and I very much enjoyed it. So I would say pretty hot. Yeah, on the warm side. So yes, I would love to know what you think, if you have read it or if you are contemplating reading it, if you think you will still pick it up based on the things that I have said today. As I said before, the vote for March's Hot or Not pick will be in the community tab on my channel at the same time that this video goes live. If you are interested to see the book that I reviewed for Hot or Not last month, which was Your Neighbour's Table, I will leave that review here for you, and I will see you all very soon with another one. Bye guys!